Good afternoon, and thank you for joining us. It's my pleasure to welcome today's Dean's Distinguished Lecture Speaker, Roger Goodell, who, as you all know, is the commissioner of what's likely the most popular sports league in the United States, the National Football League. We in public health place a premium on health promotion. We see physical activity, cultivation of the body, and the act of increasing physical strength as intrinsic to good health. That's one side of sports. It is a fundamental part of promoting activity and good health. Healthy exercise, healthy competition have the potential to improve both physical health, but also mental well-being. But we in public health are also very concerned with anticipating ways that injuries can and do occur, and in developing ways to prevent those injuries. Prevention takes many forms. It usually begins with awareness that there is a problem, and frequently requires major cultural shifts in society to be successful. For example, Harvard School of Public Health promoted the concept of the designated driver in the United States to prevent drinking and driving, and that campaign's use of the media over time has been very successful in preventing literally thousands of deaths from drunk driving. We were also the first to identify the dangers of secondhand smoke, which ultimately led to the creation of smoke-free workplaces, smoke-free restaurants, and other public spaces. And so today we come to the issue of injuries in sport and how to prevent the risk of long-term complications when injuries, particularly concussions, occur in contact sports, whether it be at the professional level of the NFL or at the high school and youth sports level. There is much that we need to learn and to do. In particular, more effort, we believe, has to be made to increase awareness among players and coaches at all levels of the risks associated with concussions. Currently, 40 states, including Massachusetts, as well as the District of Columbia, have passed laws that prevent players in youth sports from returning to play following a concussion unless cleared by a medical professional. But as we saw with drinking and driving, laws alone, and even laws combined with public information campaigns, are not enough. We need a culture shift as well. We need to find effective ways to encourage coaches, parents, players, and everyone involved to not underestimate the dangers of returning an athlete to the playing field too soon following a concussion. We also need a bigger discussion about what other programs, procedures, equipment improvements, and medical assessments need to be put in place and enforced at all levels of sports to ensure that our talented athletes are not endangering their health and their future off the field when they played competitive contact sports. As our own David Hemingway, director of the Harvard Injury Control Research Center, has argued, it is very important that we evaluate the effectiveness of interventions to deal with this challenge so that we can engage in a process of constant learning from experience and improvement of our best practices. There is also a lot more research that needs to be done to help individuals who have suffered significant brain trauma, research that we hope will help not only those who have been injured playing professional sports, but also returning soldiers who have suffered head trauma on the battlefield, as well as others in occupations in which significant brain injuries can occur. All of this is why we are really delighted to welcome our guest today. The purpose of the Dean's Distinguished Lecture Series here at Harvard School of Public Health is to bring together leaders in key fields in society with our students and faculty to talk about significant public health issues like these, so we can exchange ideas about how best to solve them. Roger Goodell captained the football, basketball, and baseball teams in high school, but an injury kept him from playing football at Washington and Jefferson College, from which he graduated in 1981. Roger began his career at the National Football League in 1982 as an intern after an intensive letter-writing campaign to get a job in football, I am told. He has risen through the ranks over the past 30 years in a variety of positions, where he had responsibility for the league's football operations and officiating, as well as supervising different business functions. During his career, he has played an extensive role in league expansion, realignment, the launch of the NFL Network, and securing new television agreements. Roger was named commissioner of the NFL in 2006. Now, in his 7th year leading the league, Roger has identified the promotion of a culture of safety for the league's players and for football players and athletes at all levels as a high priority. Roger will now speak to us about leadership on the road to a safer game. Following his talk, we will take questions from the students, faculty, and staff in the audience. So please join me in welcoming Roger Goodell. Thank you.
Thank you, Dean. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. Well, good afternoon. Let me begin by thanking Dean Julio Frank for inviting me to speak here today. It's truly an honor to discuss two topics that I'm passionate about: the game of football and its future. The history of football is closely connected with the history of Harvard. Football has been played here with distinction since 1873. Professor Paul Weiler of Harvard Law School persuasively argues that the first college football game took place in Cambridge between Harvard and McGill University. President Faust paid eloquent tribute to Harvard's football legacy in a speech the night before last year's Harvard-Yale game. She mentioned the university's landmark innovations in the game: uniforms, a team, doctor, a trainer, a kicking specialist. Harvard's legacy includes 8 national championships and 20 college football Hall of Famers. Also, the current starting quarterback of the Buffalo Bills, Ryan Fitzpatrick, and Baltimore Ravens center, Matt Burke, who last year won the Walter Payton Award as the NFL Man of the Year for his services on and especially off the field. Football is embedded in your traditions, and your contributions have defined and changed how we play the game. We are proud of the connection. And we know that Harvard is proud of your team and players for their extraordinary accomplishments on the football field, in the classroom, and in life. From Harvard's first African-American football captain, William Lewis, in 1893, to Coach Murphy's fine team this year, you have given so much to the sport we love. And good luck to the Crimson this Saturday in the game against Yale, one of football's grandest traditions. Harvard and the NFL both stand for something else: leadership. Others in education, sports, and countless places beyond the playing fields look to us to influence their own decisions. We embrace our leadership position. And leadership means certain things, whether in sports, academia, or public health. It means thinking about the long term. It means listening and learning from people, including your critics, those who may be telling you what you don't want to hear. It means facing up to your challenges and working tirelessly to make sure you make the right choices for the right reasons, based on science and facts, not speculation. So today, in this place of leadership, I want to speak about the health and safety of athletes, not just in the NFL and football, but in all sports and all levels of play. Our nation is experiencing a public health crisis fueled by growing levels of obesity, particularly in children. You understand the consequences and what needs to be done to reverse the trend. We know kids need to exercise, put simply, to play. And we know that whatever they play, they need to do it safely. with respect for the rules and other competitors, and in support of teamwork and sportsmanship. Other than my family, my passion is football, and always has been. As a kid, it seemed like I was always either playing or thinking about football. The values I learned from the game are central to who I am. I learned about commitment, communication, sacrifice, and determination. It was fun, exciting, and the ultimate team sport. 30 years ago, I joined the NFL as an intern in Commissioner Pete Rozell's office. I was Pete Rozell's driver at Super Bowl 20 in New Orleans in 1986. I couldn't believe my luck, and I couldn't imagine a better job. It was the beginning of a dream, and I'm still living it. It has been at times a humbling journey. I have been fortunate to preside over the National Football League for 7 seasons now. As a league, we continue to enjoy great success. A growing number of fans, more than 1 million a week, attend our games in our stadiums. The 16 most watched TV shows this fall are all NFL games. That is aside from the presidential debates, which they were almost a contact sport too. A recent Harris poll indicated that the NFL's popularity is rising at an all-time high and up 12% from just 10 years ago. The second most popular sport is college football. The interest is simply amazing, driven by the character of the game, the talent and hard work of our athletes, and the dedication of our coaches and the passion of our fans. I don't need to tell you that our nation is sharply divided on many issues. But, as President Obama said just last week, one of the big unifiers in this country is sports, and football in particular. You don't go anyplace where folks don't talk about football. Football connects generations. Many of us remember watching games with parents and grandparents. We've experienced the joy of introducing the game to our own children. It inspires us to rally around players, teams, and cities. It brings together families, friends, and communities. And on a few occasions every year, it brings together the entire country. Football has earned a vital place in the rhythm of American life. Nearly 6 million kids play flag or tackle football. Another 1.1 million play high school football, and 75,000 play in college. For many reasons, I have never been more optimistic about football's future, or more confident about its place in our society. Optimistic, but not complacent. The game of football is thriving. It is more compelling than ever. But it is also seen by some as a game at a crossroads, and not for the first time. We are well aware of social commentators who now question our future. And I'm here to tell you, if we are at another crossroads, we have already taken the right path. We took it a long time ago, and our commitment to stay on it will not waver. The risk of injury in football is well known. Throughout history, football has evolved. It has become safer and safer again. President Faust spoke last year about eliminating the dangerous flying wedge in the college game more than a century ago. In recent years, there's been a much sharper focus on concussions in football and other sports. There are still unanswered questions, but scientists and doctors know more about concussions and their long-term potential effects than they did even a few years ago. The key issue for us is how we use this new understanding to make the game even safer and more exciting in the future. I can say in no uncertain terms that this is our biggest challenge. changing the culture in a way that reduces the injury risk to the maximum possible extent, especially the risk of head injury. We want players to enjoy long and prosperous careers and healthy lives off the field. So we focus relentlessly on player health and safety while also keeping the game fun and unpredictable. My most important job is to protect the integrity of the game, but it goes well beyond that. It is also to protect the 1,800 professionals who choose to play and make our game so great. The responsibility to our players does not end when they hang up their uniform for the last time. The health and safety of former, current, and future players involves many facets, not just head injuries. It includes the quality of playing fields, the equipment players wear, rules to protect them from unnecessary risk, programs to support their lives off the field, and post-career benefits. At one time, spinal cord injuries were considered a greater risk than they are today. But after changes in rules and techniques, the risk of these injuries have been dramatically reduced. We also have addressed the impact of heat and hydration, better educating our medical staffs and players, and supporting the outstanding work of the Corey Stringer Institute. Now we are devoting more resources to the well-being of players as they transition away from the game, including their mental health. We more than accept this responsibility on total health and safety. We seek it, we pursue it, and we honor it. We do it to make a difference in football, in all sports, and we hope beyond. I'm sure some of you have asked yourself the same tough questions others ask. When there's a risk associated with playing tackle football, why do people continue to play? And for parents, should I let my kids play tackle football? These are valid, important questions. Answers can differ from person to person, and especially from parent to parent. In trying to respond to these concerns, we have looked to the realities of football. We have established an open dialogue, speaking frankly and engaging our critics directly, so that we can improve the safety of football. Whether to play football or any contact sport is a highly personal choice for kids and parents. It must be a thoughtful, informed decision. The simple truth is that any physical activity comes with risk and reward. Head injuries occur in sports. Earlier this month, many of the world's top sports concussion experts convened in Zurich, Switzerland. It is a leading conference on concussion in sport. In attendance were experts from the International Olympic Committee, international soccer, or as they say, football, rugby, equestrian competition, Australian rules football, and many other sports, including the NFL. The chief medical officer of the International Soccer Federation noted that 300 million people around the world play soccer. Concussions are hardly an issue limited to football or the NFL. Concussions affect more than 30 million athletes in the United States and more than 350 million athletes around the world. The conference reached a thoughtful consensus on how to advance safety, teach proper techniques and fundamentals, educate coaches, parents, and players about concussion recognition and management, eliminate unnecessary contact, and continue to research the unanswered questions surrounding concussions. At the same time, these international experts recommended that sports be played actively, but safely, without regard to age. These few steps will make sports safer for all. There is no question that there are tremendous benefits to playing team sports like football, whether it's tackle, flag, or touch football in the backyard. Benefits such as physical fitness, self-discipline, friendships, leadership opportunities, self-esteem, college scholarships, and most importantly, just plain fun. Presidents from Dwight Eisenhower to John Kennedy to Gerald Ford played and loved football. Business leaders like Jeff Immelt and military leaders like General Ray Odierno learned important lessons from playing football. At West Point, the cadets are required to play a team sport because the experience is fundamental to leadership development. Is playing tackle football worth the risk? For some, the answer may be no, but millions say yes. We emphatically say yes. And I pledge the NFL will do everything in its power to minimize the risk and maximize the rewards of this great and increasingly global game. The way I look at it, football is always at a crossroads, facing challenges that require leaders to act with courage and purpose to secure and advance its future. Let's look back at one issue that involved Harvard more than a century ago in 1905, before the NFL even existed. This was a time when football was extremely dangerous and violent. More than 150 players suffered serious injuries, and 18 players died in 1904 alone, at a time when far fewer athletes played football. Just think about that for a moment. 18 student athletes died in one season, primarily from skull fractures. The nature of the game at that time led to widespread criticism. In 1903, the New York Times stated that football was trending toward, quote, mayhem and homicide. Some called for ending the sport, including Harvard President Charles Eliot. The future of football was very much in doubt. But a Harvard graduate who happened to be the President of the United States loved football. And Teddy Roosevelt came to football's rescue. He had not played football at Harvard, but he loved the game. He saw the merit in the lessons and principles that make football compelling. And in December of 1905, he brought the big three, Harvard, Yale, and Princeton, to the White House. He convinced them that something had to change. President Roosevelt recognized the game didn't need to end, it needed to evolve. As a result of President Roosevelt's initiative and the leadership of Harvard, key rules and equipment of the game were changed. And what became the NC2A was created. This led to modern football, one that included the forward pass, 10 yards for a first down, and the elimination of the flying wedge. These changes led to a more wide open, safer game. Teddy Roosevelt helped transform a sport in trouble into something better. A game that has helped shape the lives and careers of generations of young men in so many positive ways. In 1910, President Woodrow Wilson observed that the changes were working. Quote, the new game of football seems far more enjoyable than the old one, he said. The new rules are doing much more to bring football to a high level as a sport, for its brutal features are being done away with and better elements retained. So it was that a Harvard graduate and the university itself played a pivotal role in transforming football and paving the way to future success. The game has continued to evolve. Not long ago, the game allowed the head slap, tackling by the face mask, horse collars, dangerous blocks, and hits to the head of defenseless receivers and quarterbacks. All of that has changed. Quote, the war against roughness in pro football is a continuing one, said the NFL commissioner. That was Pete Rozelle in 1963. An unfolding tragedy. That was a headline. The story said, as football injuries mount, lawsuits increase, and insurance rates soar. The game is headed toward a crisis, one that is epitomized by the helmet, which is both a barbarous weapon and inadequate protection. It was Sports Illustrated cover story in 1978. Protecting the health and safety of players has included taking drug abuse and steroids out of the game. We have randomly tested year-round for steroids since 1990, the first league to do so, with immediate suspensions for any violations. Next, we need to implement testing to make sure human growth hormone is out of the game. Performance-enhancing drugs are dangerous. They also present unknown risk that may be seriously impacting an athlete's health in ways he or she never considered. Some have suggested that there may be a link between these performance-enhancing drugs and concussions and brain disease. Football has always evolved, and it always will. Make no mistake, change does not inhibit the game, it improves it. It's with Teddy Roosevelt in mind that we embrace today's challenges. I learned a long time ago that you don't do things because they are popular in the short term. You do them because they are right for the long term. And this is the right conversation to be having. My commitment has been and will continue to be to change the culture of football, to better protect players, without changing the essence of what makes the game so popular. It has been done, and it will be done. As stewards of the game, it is our responsibility to promote a culture of safety, to be leaders. So let me share with you some of the specifics on how we are leading. Leaders do not sit and wait for others to provide answers. We will continue to make rule changes, invest in innovative protective equipment, and provide our medical staffs the tools and authority to protect players on the field. The rule in our league is simple and straightforward. Medical decisions override everything else. There has been attention this week on the fact that 3 NFL quarterbacks sustained concussions last Sunday. The positive development was that all 3 were taken out of the game as soon as they showed symptoms. The team medical staff then diagnosed a concussion, and each player was out of the game. That is progress. That is the way it should be in all sports at every level. We know that our actions set an example. The concussion awareness material and training videos we developed with the Centers for Disease Control were used by the U.S. Olympic Committee this past summer. The United States military, NASCAR, and college conferences have adopted our concussion protocols. The Ivy League this year adopted rules similar to the ones in the new agreement with our players, limiting contact in practices and emphasizing taking the head out of the game, as we have been doing. High schools and colleges must take leadership role as well with their coaches and athletes. An aggressive dialogue and educational efforts at all levels will raise awareness and change the culture to more strongly emphasize safety. We challenge everyone in sports to be agents of culture change, and we will learn from each other. There is more to be done, and we will continue to lead by example. Second, leaders base decisions on facts. We actively support independent and transparent medical research. Much of this focuses on the brain, sometimes called the last frontier of medicine, and a public health issue that affects millions. Most of them don't even play sports. We hope our focus on brain injury and the discoveries ahead will benefit the broader population. We recently committed $30 million to the National Institutes of Health for research on the brain. The agreement with our players sets aside an additional $100 million for similar medical research over the next decade. We have invested millions more in medical research through our charitable foundations, including at the Boston University Center for the Study of CTE. The center's co-director, Dr. Robert Stern, is here today. We may learn through breakthroughs in science that there are genetic or other factors that makes certain individuals predisposed to concussions or brain disease. If an athlete has repeated concussions or takes longer to recover, it may signal a problem unique to that individual. Such individuals will benefit from advances in the science of concussion. They will be able to make more informed decisions about whether to accept the risk of playing a contact sport. We support research into the new helmet designs and have sponsored independent helmet testing to provide better information to players on helmet performance. One of the helmets our players wear was designed by a former Harvard quarterback, Vin Farrar. We may see a day when there are different helmets for different positions, based on which helmet can best protect players at that position. As a sport that is on the national stage and under the spotlight, we are working to make a difference. Innovations in research today will improve safety in the sport tomorrow and for future generations in all sports. Third, we are committed to strengthening our playing rules and insisting on strict enforcement. Preserving the essence of the game while reducing unnecessary risk means we constantly have to reevaluate and refresh our rules, reasonably and responsibly. Strategy, strength, and speed are what makes the game great. We don't want to take the physical contact out of the game, but we must ensure the players follow rules designed to reduce the risk of injury. Enforcing rules on illegal hits to the head with fines and suspensions has changed tackling for the better. Players and coaches have adjusted. They always do. We now see fewer dangerous hits to the head and noticeable changes in the way the game is being played. We continue to look for other ways to take the head out of the game. 2 years ago, we moved the kickoff line 5 yards forward to the 35. That reform yielded real benefits. A 40% reduction in concussions last year on kickoffs. College football then adopted our rule. Some think that the kickoff, the play with the highest injury rate, should be eliminated from the game or modified even further. There are several ideas, but here's one from an NFL head coach. Put a weight limit on players for kickoffs. Smaller players against smaller players would mean less severe collisions. We will monitor the data on kickoffs and all plays with an open mind toward change. Our player safety panel, co-chaired by Hall of Famers Ronnie Lott and John Madden, has recommended that our competition committee carefully review rules on all blocks below the waist. Protecting defenseless players started decades ago by banning the hitting of kickers. We now have 9 separate categories of defenseless players in our rulebook. All players can be defenseless in certain situations, and we must address it comprehensively. The right safety equipment is also crucial. Next year, NFL players will be required to wear knee and thigh pads, as players are required to do at every other level of football. Many NFL players haven't been wearing them. Getting them into the right equipment is part of changing the culture. Technology is also helping us. Recent developments include new protocols, certified athletic trainers and press boxes to serve as spotters for team medical staffs, and the use of iPads and cell phones by medical staffs on the sidelines. We allow this technology for medical reasons, but not for competitive purposes. We are testing accelerometers in helmets. They are sensors that determine the impact of a hit. We are also testing sensors in shoulder pads that may give us important information. The most significant innovation may be the use of video by medical staffs on the sidelines to evaluate the mechanism of injury. We started it late last season and now use it for every game. It allows the team doctors and trainers to more quickly understand and better treat an injury. Our team medical staffs are raving about it. Fourth, we use our leadership position to advocate for safety in sports. We took a lead role in supporting the Zachary Lystead Youth Concussion Law. It applies to all sports. It requires education for coaches, players, and parents, removal from games and practice for any school athlete who suffers a concussion, and clearance by a medical professional before the athlete can return to play. This law has now been passed by 40 states and the District of Columbia. Our goal is to secure approval in all 50 states, and I am confident that we will get there. We are committed to the safety of young athletes, starting as soon as they step on the field. My twin daughters in middle school play lacrosse and soccer. Girls soccer has the second highest rate of concussions in youth sports. I'm concerned for their safety. I want them to play, but I want them to play for coaches who know how to teach the proper techniques and who are trained in the safety of their sport. 10 years ago, we helped endow a nonprofit organization called USA Football. With the CDC and other medical and football experts, USA Football created the only national accredited coaching course in the history of football. Tens of thousands of coaches have completed the course. Better certification and background checks of all coaches must be among the highest priorities for all youth sports. USA Football has commissioned an injury study, research that the youth game has never seen. It also established a pilot program this year called Heads Up Football. This program invites parents to participate and delivers training for safer tackling, practice regimens modeled on the NFL, and a safety coach whose sole task is to monitor and ensure player safety in practices and games. In fact, there is a critical need for more certified athletic trainers for youth and high school sports. According to the National Athletic Trainers Association, in 2010, only 42% of high schools had access to certified trainers who are trained in concussion care. There is more we can do to make youth sports safer. And again, we stand ready to lead. And finally, we know we can't do it alone. To learn what needs to be learned and do what needs to be done, we need partners with expertise to make things happen. We will continue to work with leading organizations to support independent research. One day, we hope that will include the Harvard School of Public Health. We have assembled an all-volunteer advisory panel of doctors, scientists, and thought leaders in brain injury from academia, sports medicine, engineering, the NIH, the CDC, the Department of Defense. It includes some of our earlier critics. This group has 4 subcommittees and is directing discussion and research ranging from long-term outcomes to education to making safer equipment. It includes another Harvard graduate and former Crimson football player, Dr. Mitch Berger. Dr. Robert Cantu, long respected in this area, is here today and is advisor to our committee. We also have 8 other medical advisory committees within our league, comprised mostly of doctors and including 3 other experts from inside and outside the league. These committees are overseen by a committee of owners chaired by an NFL owner, who is also a physician, Dr. John York of the San Francisco 49ers. Earlier this year, with the help of the Consumer Product Safety Commission, we launched a pilot program to replace helmets in underserved schools. It was a big success. We need to be driven by facts and data, not perceptions and suppositions. The National Institute of Occupational Safety and Health, NIOSH, has done studies on NFL players. This summer, NIOSH exploded a myth that has been circulating for years, that the life expectancy of NFL players was 55 years of age. That caused many NFL players to make a bad decision to take their pension early at much lower rates. NIOSH found that the true life expectancy of an NFL player is actually longer than the general population. There are real-life consequences when working off bad facts. One of our most exciting and innovative new partnerships is with the Army, helping to change the culture in both organizations. Too often, bravery and commitment to the unit or team stand in the way of safety. In this new partnership, NFL players and service members are working together to put in place a culture of safety. It is helping players and soldiers identify the signs and symptoms of brain injuries and empowering them to make better decisions. We are working cooperatively to make soldiers and athletes safer. We are proud to be leaders in sports health and safety. Members of Congress, former critics, influential members of the news media, and others have praised our initiatives. But while we have worked hard throughout our history, the right road is never ending. Evolution, by nature, does not stop. Football will always continue to evolve. The culture of the athlete is still too much of a play through it rather than a player-safe mentality. Many players have publicly admitted to hiding concussions and other head injuries. I was recently at dinner with family friends. Their 15-year-old daughter plays field hockey and told me how during a recent game she hit her head on the turf and blacked out for a moment. She didn't tell anyone because she didn't want to come out of the game. The next day, she was diagnosed with a concussion. It's the warrior mentality in a 15-year-old girl. This is unfortunate, but we are working with players, team doctors, and coaches to change that culture. It is changing, but will take more time, resolve, patience, and determination. Let me conclude with one question. What is our goal? I can answer in one simple word: safety. A safer game for all who play at every level of football. A safer game made even more exciting through thoughtful adjustments of the rules, next generation equipment, pioneering research, and transparent partnerships with the best minds. The road may be long and twisting, but I have no doubt we will reach our destination. A culture of safety for every sport, so our world continues to be blessed by the vital and vibrant rewards that come uniquely from all sports. For football, I can say with humility, resolve, and confidence, the best is yet to come. I thank you for your time. I'll take any questions you might have. Who would like to go first? Yes, ma'am.
About your alumni and what tools you're using to track alumni health after the game.
I'm sorry.
Track alumni health after the game?
Yes, it's a very important initiative for us, is the health of our players once they get done playing the game. And there's no secret that we have challenges in that area. We are trying to address programs that are specific to that population, whether they be head injuries. We have a joint replacement program that we offer to our players. In the 13 best hospitals, you can go have a joint replacement. And if you can't afford to pay for it, the NFL does. We do cardiovascular screening for our former players to try to get them to understand that when they stop playing, they need to continue to exercise and make sure they stay healthy so they avoid that inevitable weight gain. But the big issue for us is always to make sure we maintain that relationship with them and we can offer those services, that they know what's available and they can take advantage of it. And that has been a continuing struggle for us. And we're working harder to reach out and make sure they know the services that are available. The biggest change, though, in the last couple of years, and it's something we're very proud of, and we announced this summer, is in the area of mental health. Helping players transition through life. It's a big challenge. We all have that challenge. When a player comes into the NFL, it's a transition. When they leave the NFL, it may even be a bigger transition because they no longer have that support group. And we want to provide them the resources to be able to make those transitions successfully. And we're working more with the players while they're in the league and working with them all the way through so that they can make those transitions successfully. Yes, ma'am.
You mentioned that with increased knowledge of long-term consequences, ultimately your players can make their own decision about the risk-reward of continuing playing given the risk of head injuries. And that seems like a reasonable and defensible thing for adults playing in the NFL as a career, but at what age do you think that's not a decision the players should be even given the opportunity to make in terms of, you know, maybe requiring parental consent after watching videos with, you know, the best information about long-term consequences, just things of that nature?
Just so I'm answering your question, are you talking about NFL players?
Well,
or are you talking about youth players?
Well, so you mentioned that that's a choice that NFL players can make, but do you think that that's a choice that youth players should be making?
Well, I think I mentioned in here, I think it's a very personal decision, and it's one that has to be done with the parent and with the individual and also with the medical professionals. There may be people who shouldn't play football because they have a predisposition to an injury, a concussion in particular. You may have suffered a number of concussions in multiple sports that they're happening more frequently, or it's taking longer for you to recover from that injury. Those are things you need to talk about with medical professionals. I'm not a doctor, but I think those are the important things that you need to do. If you get to that point and the doctors say you shouldn't play, you shouldn't play.
I guess I'm wondering if you think that there should be required education or like a sort of consent process for youth players that involves all of this kind of medical oversight.
Well, that's exactly what the Zachary Lystead law does. It requires education, and it's why we're trying to get it passed in all 50 states, so that every young participant, no matter what the sport, they have to be educated to what concussions and what are the symptoms. They have to understand that they need to come out of the game, and the supervisors, the coaches, primarily in this case, or medical professionals need to take them out of the game, and they shouldn't return to play until they've fully recovered and medical professionals have cleared them. So I do believe very strongly that we should do a better job of educating, and we should hold people to a higher standard on that, regardless of the sport.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
In regards to the concussions that happened this last week, you said that 3 quarterbacks suffered concussions, were taken out just right after they suffered these injuries. Alex Smith, it was reported, threw a touchdown pass with blurred vision. And then you have players like James Harrison who continue to deliver really hard hits and say that, you know, that's how they were taught to play football, and they're not trying to injure players. It's just kind of through the course of the game, these injuries happen. Do you think it's more of a cultural phenomenon with kind of the bounty gate sort of thing going on, or is it something that can be changed through protection and safety?
Well, there's no simple answer to that. It's a complex issue, and I think it's all of those things. I think it requires a cultural change because what I said in, I think, my remarks was that the players were taken out when they developed symptoms. If they don't tell medical professionals that they're getting symptoms, it's difficult to tell. If we see an impact that we think he's showing symptoms, we'll take him out of the game. In addition, we need teammates to be able to say, this guy's not right. Something's wrong. He needs to be evaluated, and get him off the field. It's one of the issues we're dealing with in the military, because soldiers, and I was up at West Point with General Odierno just recently, soldiers don't want to come off the battlefield when their fellow soldiers are out there. It's that warrior mentality. But they said they would if their fellow soldier said, you need to get out. You need to get back. And it's the same is true in the NFL. If you're not prepared to make that decision, hopefully a teammate will, a game official, a coach, and ultimately a medical professional. What I think was progress about what happened this week, as unfortunate as it is when you have concussions, is that it was identified and they were taken out of the game. Even a few years ago, I'm not sure that would have happened. And players need to be able to stand up and say, I have an injury and I need to be evaluated. And we have to do everything we can to spot that when it occurs. So it's not a simple answer. I think it's going to be an effort on all parts. Yes, sir. I'll come back.
About the messaging. I want to ask a question about the messaging, especially to kids who are playing football, because most people don't have the opportunity to hear you speak. But they do see their broadcast commentators speaking, coaches after the game and so forth, and they pretty much never talk about safety. What they talk about is winning at all costs. And certainly the message that I've seen from the NFL is, you know, win or you're out of here. And safety just doesn't come up. It strikes me that one of the roles the NFL could play is to really think about the messaging, not only of the NFL, but of those that represent the NFL to most of the population.
You are absolutely right. And we work diligently with our broadcast partners to make sure that they do present the NFL in the right light. I agree with you that too often you'll see people who say, that's football. That's the way it's supposed to be played. I don't accept that. Football's a tough game, and it's played rough. But when those rules are violated, they need to make sure that people indicate that, and our broadcast partners do that. And I think they're getting better at it. I think that's part of the culture change that we have to continue to do. I don't believe it is winning at all costs. I think you need to win the right way. And we just have to keep working at that. That's part of the determination. The young man behind you, I know, had a question. So.
Thanks for coming today. I think what you're doing for player safety is great. Hi. Yeah, thanks. I love the NFL, but I'm just wondering.
It's that butt I always worry about.
Yeah, sorry, it's a question. I know as commissioner, your first responsibility is to the owners. And I was just hoping you could explain to us how you sort of balance decisions when the interests of the owners and the best interests of player safety are not aligned. I think like the most often cited example is your support for an 18-game regular season during the lockout. You know, and the players pushed back because they thought, I guess, it would be detrimental to their health. And how do you balance a decision like that? Presumably you wouldn't even consider going to a 30 or 40 game regular season, but how do you make a decision that 2 additional games of contact is worth the risk?
Well, a couple things. One is, and I believe I said it in my comments, my first responsibility is to the game. And I do a lot of things that the owners don't appreciate, either individually or collectively. But if it's in the best interest of the game, I'm going to do that. We had the right to go, in fact, to a 20-game schedule in our prior collective bargaining agreement. We could have done that unilaterally. We chose not to do that. And the reason we chose not to do that is we felt it needed to be done thoughtfully in cooperation with the players. So we did not do that. And in fact, in the collective bargaining agreement that we now are operating under, we have to do that cooperatively. We have to do that together. And we made changes in that collective bargaining agreement to change the way we train our players in the off-season, during training camp, and even during the regular season that have been uniformly praised by the players. It got some resistance from our coaches initially, but even they are saying this is the right thing to do. So a lot of it's just about having the courage to do it if it's the right thing to do. I'm not concerned, as I said earlier, I'm not concerned with people's reaction in the short term if it's the right long-term decision. And you can't make everybody happy in this business or probably any other business. But if you do the right things for the long term and you do what's right for the game, that's what your responsibility is. Yes?
I'm Bob Stern from the BU Center for the Study of Traumatic Encephalopathy. And as you know, we initially, our group of researchers were amongst your biggest critics. And I want to say—
You're not alone.
Yeah. And I just want to say that we, and I applaud your leadership, not only in the NFL, but across all sports over these last several years in really making a huge difference. The changes that you've made in the NFL have just changed the game dramatically for the safety of the players. One of the big changes that you didn't mention before that came out of the collective bargaining agreement is the reduction of full contact practices by a dramatic amount. And to me, that's perhaps one of the most critical things that can be done to save the brains of our players, especially for the future. One of the things I'd love to hear you discuss is, in that context, concussions are really the tip of the iceberg in many ways, where it's this repetitive hit to the head, the overall exposure to the more mild hits to the head that might put people at risk down the road. And I'd like to hear, in addition to reducing practices like that, what the league might be considering in the future.
Well, you do point out, and I just mentioned it in my the last question prior to yours, but I do think it's probably one of the most significant changes in our collective bargaining agreement, and certainly in the game of football going forward. And I hope it will go well beyond the NFL. It will go to every other level of football. And I did mention it briefly in there, but it deserves some more focus. What we did was we restricted the amount of time players can be involved with football in the off season. There were many reasons for it. One was to reduce the exposures. The second was to allow the players, from a mental health standpoint, to focus on themselves and their families and potentially their next careers. So we prohibit them actually from coming near the facilities for an extended period of time, well into April, which has been met with resistance, particularly from coaches. But it has not damaged the game, despite that. And in fact, we think it's improved the game, and most importantly, improved the health of the players. In the training camp period, there's an acclimation period. So when you come into a football camp as an NFL player, you can't actually be engaged in contact for several days until you get acclimated. And that's been another positive change. So there are a series of changes that I think have reduced not only the exposures, but have made it healthier and safer for our players. And it's something we're very proud about in our collective bargaining agreement, and I think you're right. So I appreciate you for pointing that out. Young man right there.
Related to reducing full contact practices, I was wondering if there's been any discussion independent of extending the regular season games to reducing the preseason games, which are essentially full contact practices that are longer, especially when you consider the fact that a lot of the players that participate in them the most are ones that aren't going to be in the NFL very long, if at all, and the effects that they would have afterwards and leaving in their regular career then.
Well, the young men who are trying to make a squad want to have those additional games because that's their chance to develop their skills and prove that they're worthy of making an NFL team. Where I'm concerned about it is on two fronts. On the player health and safety, do we need the additional exposure to impact? I don't believe that the veterans players need 4 preseason games anymore. I think that the primary purpose of a preseason for a team is to evaluate players and develop players. And then they select their team. For veteran players, they're getting in shape, but our athletes stay in shape all year round now. It's a different game. So I believe we can get to 2 games, and it's one of the genesis of the 18-2 or potentially the 16-2. And both of those are alternatives that we have to look at. Do I think we'll move towards a shorter preseason? Yes, from a health and safety standpoint, but also from the standpoint of the fan reaction. It just does not meet the standard of quality that the NFL is all about. And people come to our stadiums or watch on television, they expect to see the best football. And that means the best players in a competitive game. We don't deliver on that promise in the preseason. You want me to take one more, Dean, or you're cutting me off? You're the boss, so I'm not going to argue. So.
One more.
Okay, who wants the last question? Gentleman over there.
Thank you, Commissioner Goodell. I really appreciate your measures to make the game safer. I think that there are some things that might seem counterproductive to making it safer for players and for increasing the quality of the game. For example, your commitment to Thursday night football games and having games on either side of that on the Sunday, either preceding or I believe on the preceding. For example, the Baltimore Ravens played, I believe it was 4 games in 17 days this season, culminating with possibly season-ending injuries for Ray Lewis, Ladarius Webb. How committed are you to continuing to hold these Thursday night games when clearly, players are getting injured during these games, the quality of the game is going down on Thursday? I appreciate your comments on that.
Well, you make a very good point, but you have to be careful, and it's one of the points that I tried to make in there, is drawing conclusions without facts. and without understanding, is that really what's causing the injury? Did that cause Ray Lewis's arm injury? The fact is we have to look at the data and the results and see, is there a higher frequency of injuries? We have not seen that. When you speak directly to the players, they actually, in most cases, like the Thursday night game because they don't practice very much the week of a Thursday game, and they get 10 days off after that. And they enjoy that aspect of it. So the reaction, while always mixed, right now it's been quite positive from a player standpoint, but also we have not seen anything in our injury data that would indicate the concerns that you're talking about. If we did, we would certainly evaluate that. But we started with 8 games, and we've been doing that for now, I believe, 7 seasons and moved to 13 games and have not seen the impacts that you're talking about. If we did, we would change what we're doing.
Well, let me draw this extraordinary session to a close. First of all, by thanking Roger Goodell for coming here. I think we've been privileged to participate in an extraordinary exercise of reflection. You talk about taking the head out of the game, but clearly in planning and thinking about how to make the game safer, you're clearly using very much that part of our body. And we are now here in an academic institution. I think Roger clearly stressed the links whereby the pursuit of an integral development of young people includes physical activity and sports, and that's why there's this deep connection with Harvard. But at the same time, he emphasized what I think is the essence of public health, which is to try to anticipate problems and then make everything in our power to try to prevent them from occurring in the first place. I'd like particularly to thank Roger for the great transparency and honesty with which he has addressed some of the concerns that were expressed here and for the efforts to really promote the safety of this sport. And so to thank him for coming here, since Roger doesn't have enough to do with sports gear, we thought that as a sign of our, a small token of our appreciation, we would give you a sweatshirt and a cap from the Harvard School of Public Health. So
that's very nice. I guess I'll wear it on Saturday, right?
To keep you connected
that's very
to
nice.
your everyday activity.
Thank you very much.
Here is this as a very small token of our appreciation.
Thank you very much. That's very nice.
Thank you. And I'd like everyone, everyone is invited to join us at a reception at this point. Thank you all for coming.
Thank you. Thanks, Steve. Thank you. That's very